This is episode 72 with Nick Gerhart.
Welcome to Spot On Insurance. Join us each week as we speak to insurance professionals, attorneys, regulators, and compliance specialists on topics ranging from improving your agency to staying on the right side of the law. Subscribe and stay informed on the effects of new trends and disruptive emerging technologies on your businesses and your industry.
I'm Ted Tavares.
And this is Arlene Tavares.
Our guest, Nick Gerhart, serves as Chief Administrative Officer of FBL Financial Group, Inc., Farm Bureau Financial Services. In his role, Nick has responsibility for enterprise strategic planning, government relations, human resources, and health services. Man, I'm having a hard time getting that out. Nick served as the Insurance Commissioner of the state of Iowa from February of 2013 until December of 2016. Prior to that, he worked at Salmon's Financial Group and American Equity Investment Life Insurance Company. He earned his law degree and health law certificate from St. Louis University School of Law and a Master's of Health Administration from St. Louis University School of Public Health. He also earned a BA from the University of Northern Iowa. Nick, welcome to Spot On Insurance.
It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
I am just so honored that you are here on Spot On Insurance. I've been looking forward to the interview with you, and let's get right into it. Iowa is such a big insurance state. So I just want to ask you, did you always dream of a career in the insurance industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always tell people, if you did, there's something wrong with you. Unless you had a family member that was an agent or in the business, and even Iowa being an insurance state, no, I did not aspire to enter the insurance industry. In fact, I went to school, as my bio suggested, to go be a hospital administrator. Thought I'd be running a hospital by this point in my career. Moved back to Iowa after that stint in St. Louis and a couple other places, and told my wife, I'll be in the insurance industry for a year or two and find something else to do. And 10 years later, I got appointed commissioner, and kind of the rest is history, as they say.
Nick, I want a fuller snapshot of your life. So will you take us back to, what you were thinking of in high school, what your plans were, and then what got you to this point today?
So, when I think back, my father was an entrepreneur, a doctor. I remember as a child, visiting pre-HIPAA, so you could go to the hospital and, walk around and talk to people, go to the nursing home and talk to people. And I kind of thought, again, I would be a physician, a doctor, I don't know, something like that. I met organic chemistry and realized my dad was smarter than I ever gave him credit for. And thought rather than being a doctor, maybe I'll just go tell them all what to do. So I kind of landed in on maybe I'll go be a hospital administrator. And again, like I said earlier, kind of stumbled into the insurance business from there. But I grew up in the central Iowa area. When my wife and I decided we wanted to think about a family, decided to move back here. And as you pointed out, it's a large industry employing, 20-some thousand people in the Des Moines area, many more than that across the state of Iowa, 226 carriers, domiciled here. So, insurance is in the fabric of the DNA in the state of Iowa. And so, it makes sense to land in the industry. And plus, once you're in it, it kind of sucks you in. It keeps you busy, and it's very interesting for sure.
Absolutely. So, Nick, when we think of InsurTech, we think of first, it comes to mind is Silicon Valley, where many tech companies have entered the insurance space, and that's where they're at. But a whole bunch of them are now setting up shop in Iowa.
Insurance is such a big business in Iowa, particularly in central Iowa. I mean, the Des Moines metro boasts the country's second largest concentration of insurance sales jobs, the fifth largest concentration of insurance underwriting jobs, and the nation's 10th largest concentration of insurance claims and policy processing jobs. How is this possible in Iowa?
Those are great questions. And when I was commissioner, obviously I got that a lot. And I'll start kind of growing up in the industry since 2003, you kind of got a much more of an appreciation for kind of how it has grown up as such a prominent industry in Des Moines and the state of Iowa. But as you point out, Des Moines probably in particular, in all fairness. And what I would say is, when I sat down with the governor, when I got the opportunity to sit down with him and talk about being commissioner, I kind of laid out a strategic agenda that I would have had he selected me to be the commissioner, which he did. And one of the things I talked about was Iowa has a great foundation. Yeah, it would be great to get another carrier or two to come to Iowa and domicile there. But I thought a better play, this is back in 2012, mind you. I said a better play is to focus on what the technology firms are doing and set up an accelerator, get some companies to integrate into the industry here because we have so many customers for them. So we actually, out of that, a group of people started the accelerator, the Global Insurance Accelerator, and things like that. But to get to your point about how did it all happen, Iowa had one of the largest life insurance companies many, many years ago. Equitable Life was here in Iowa. You had other entrepreneurs start other companies. I worked for, as you pointed out in my bio, American Equity, which was founded in the mid-90s. Salmon's Financial Group, the other company I worked for before Farm Bureau, started their annuity division around the same time. Those are two companies that collectively have $150 billion in assets here in Des Moines, with well over 1,000 employees. And so you had like this entrepreneurial spirit of carriers starting. Principal Financial Group, you just have such a hub. And I think really what is drawing more companies to consider coming here are several things. One is diverse, talented workforce in insurance. You have probably more actuaries per capita here than anywhere else in the United States. And in fact, when one carrier redomiciled here, the CEO said, I'm going to see more actuaries walking around Jordan Creek Mall, which is our big new mall here in central Iowa, than I will in my whole state where I'm coming from. And so it's easy to grab talent. Iowa has a very low unemployment right now, 2.7%. So it's gotten a little bit tighter job market here, but you have a lot of actuaries, several hundred here. You have the people you pointed out. So, and then you have, again, if you're an InsurTech player, if you're someone who's looking to start a firm to offer services to insurers, what better place to be than Central Iowa? We have 70-some companies around Central Iowa. And by the way, your quick drive to Omaha, which has plenty, your quick drive to Chicago, Kansas City. So kind of created an ecosystem, which really, if you think about economic development and trying to survive in this kind of jobs war we're all in, having these ecosystems is key. And ours is really insurance, financial services, agriculture, and healthcare.
But Nick, on that note, we're seeing an explosion of insurance knowledge being shared through the incubators, sandboxes, accelerator programs, and the list just goes on. Now, startups are usually staffed by young people. How's the demographics of Iowa changing?
Yeah, we are an aging population here, one of the more seasoned populations across the United States, at least per capita. But what I'll tell you is there's a lot of young people coming to Des Moines. Des Moines had several national recognitions for, like the best place for a millennial to have a career, for instance, was a recent one. So we're actually attracting more and more young and diverse talent to my company, and several other companies, not just insurance, have committed to a fellowship program in Central Iowa where we hire these young people and we donate them into this program for different things, and we train them. And it's just been a great opportunity to increase the reach of our company to that next generation. We have very robust internship program. As I'm talking to you right now, I have 53 interns on our campus right now. And so,
Wow.
We do a heck of a job trying to get our message out. We spend a lot of time, and that's one of my favorite things of doing is mentoring to the young people, trying to convince them that this is a career. Because when they go sit down with these career counselors, that I don't want to disparage them too much, but they don't know what the heck they're doing primarily. They don't know what jobs are out there, so they don't really educate these young people about what a career could look like in insurance or even other industries because they've never had one. So we have to do that for them, and we offer ourselves up to go to those universities, and we're creating different co-op programs with Iowa State University. We're working to have these types of internship programs and having 53 on campus where they get to engage with our CEO and people on the senior management team. And I take them to lunch and we get to know them as people, and we create closed Facebook pages so they stay in touch. And we're trying to really connect with these people as best we can.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is that maybe before we weren't an industry that could even compete too much in getting young people. But now when you're looking at that, we're right there using robotics and all of these new technological advances. We're designing drones just specifically for the insurance industry. We're getting the interest from the young people. So we're offering some cool jobs. So it's neat times.
I would say I couldn't agree more with that, but even further than that, I actually, yesterday spoke to the West Des Moines Chamber, does several internship meetings for the interns across the city of West Des Moines, and they asked me to come speak to them about winning the interview was the topic. How do you get a job? And I made it a point to these young people that were from many different industries, mind you. Not several were insurance, but several were outside of insurance, and which is why I wanted to go talk to them, because I wanted them to hear our story. But I said to them, I said, look, you folks are at a point in your in time where you have amazing tools at your disposal to connect with people. Des Moines is an amazing community where people will actually return your phone call and sit down with you. I mean, I sit down with young people for coffee, I don't know, several times a week. I try to pay it forward that people did for me back in the day. And I said to him, here's the thing that no recruiter is probably going to tell you, or no college person, is about 40% of most insurance companies are sitting on a tidal wave of retirement the next decade. So we have about 40% of the workforce, depending on which company you're in, it's probably plus or minus, but a lot of these companies are going to have amazing opportunities present themselves. And we need the young people as much as they need the job. And so coming in and looking at your opportunities within some of these insurance companies, it's almost limitless. I mean, it's a very good time, in my humble opinion, to be a young person starting their career in this field.
I agree with that, especially with the new technology coming in. Who better than the young people who have grown up with all this new technology that we didn't grow up with? It's second nature to them. So with all these opportunities, not only are these people retirement, but there's a need for the industry to evolve to the next level, and that their services are more needed than ever at this time.
I agree. And I think I'm a big fan of the idea of reverse mentoring, and our organization does a lot of this kind of stuff. We're very big on leadership development, developing the next generation, high potential, whatever you want to call it. And it's all woven towards, kind of career mapping for folks, so they know where they're going to stand, and they have opportunities, and they see opportunities. And on the technological front, there's two things I would add there. One is, yes, they're very technologically savvy, but some of them aren't technical. There's a difference. So we don't want to take it for granted that, hey, just because you're under 30 or under 25 or 20, you're a coder or whatever. That being said, those people, I think, actually have a lot of value too, because they're what I call the translators. They're able to understand it and translate it to other folks. And I think that those are the folks that I think intrigue me the most, are the ones that can help us not only translate it, but integrate it. How can we improve that member experience, the client experience? How do we evolve and make it so that it's an evolutionary process as we transform as an industry? That's really where I'm focusing on, is like looking at that next generation as an opportunity to, test drive some things and ideas. And we do some of that here, but also giving them a kind of a seat at the table where they can meet senior leadership, be part of mentoring programs earlier in their career, be part of a training program earlier in their career. And we have to do that because, we want to keep them interested and keep them growing and learning.
Right, absolutely. So, Nick, from 2013 till the end of 2016, you got to serve the state of Iowa as its insurance commissioner. In that role, you oversaw all aspects of insurance regulations, but probably one of the most challenging was healthcare. You were there during a time where people saw steep increases in premiums. And whenever you have that, you're going to have unhappy folks, right? Because people feel like they're getting stiffed or they're being penalized to cover people who have poor health risk. So I want to get your perspective of big data. With the advent of using big data, has that changed the game, or will we see the game change where we can efficiently access individuals' personal data to customize their individual policies?
Well, you're having me break out in hives talking about healthcare and many sleepless nights, but you summarized a lot of the feelings well, in the sense that anytime you do some transformational law, whether it's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, financial reform, Dodd-Frank, all these laws are unbelievably complex. No one reads them. No one understands them. No one actually probably appreciates the fact that there's 30,000 pages of regulations behind them, right? So you have to level set it. And then you also have to step back and realize, for a lot of people in the healthcare sphere, about 7% on average get their health care on the individual market. 90-some% on average are either in a Medicare, Medicaid, or employer-based coverage. And throughout all of this stuff, there's a lot of protections in place on what can you do and can't you do. The reason I level set it that way is that so much of what I've read out there around how data is going to be used, not going to be probably in the way people think. It's not going to be used in a discriminatory way because you can't underwrite based on that. In the Obamacare, there's no pre-existing conditions. Employer-based coverage has those protections as well, and so there are those protections. If you get your health care through Medicare or Medicaid, they don't do that. So I do think where you're going to see data possibly used the best is more on the kind of the treatment side, the preventative side. We've noticed you're taking this panel of drugs, and we think this could happen next. We should do this to mitigate that. You're going to see that kind of thing, I think, evolve. You're going to see better interoperability of medical records and the more immediate access to those medical records. You're going to see data used much more in those sort of that sphere of it versus we're going to use it in pricing. Now, some people might try to figure out how to push it through in pricing, I suppose, and they might design plans, might discriminate, I guess, and try to exclude certain drugs so they don't maybe get a hepatitis C people or HIV or whatever. But I think that's, I read a lot about that, and I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of the legal framework as we're talking now. Now, who knows what the heck happens after election, and who knows? But as we're talking now, ERISA still stands, HIPAA still stands, the Affordable Care Act still stands, and your ability to use this data is mitigated, and you really can't use it for underwriting, excluding, et cetera. So it's probably going to be much more useful for providers to use, for insurers to use, to help providers. I mean, if you're in that business right now, I would argue you're probably a technology data company more than you are an insurance company. And those that can come up with the best way to meet the members' needs, integrate technology into that, maybe use a doctor's on demand, these kinds of things, so that driving down costs, increasing efficiency, that's the win for the next several years, in my view. Now, who knows what happens 3, 5, 10 years from now in the sense that will laws change, and will there be really sort of prescriptive plans that are concierge type plans for individuals? Maybe. It doesn't exist today, but it could happen if the laws change and things happen like that.
You're on the board of a tremendously innovative startup, Copper Data, and you've mentored many InsurTechs. Coming from the regulator side of the aisle, you're able to educate startups on the importance of regulatory compliance, which we dabble in that. This is an area that often finds InsurTechs navigating an unfamiliar territory and unfortunately finding themselves in the crosshairs of regulators and paying hefty fines. What are the top challenges InsurTechs face?
I got interested in this space many years ago and helped some InsurTechs not only navigate this, but even launch to market in Iowa. And as you said, sit on the board of Carpe Data, and I've personally invested in a couple. And it's interesting. I always say they have to understand the business they're entering. I was on a panel one time where a guy was comparing insurance to buying shoes on Zappos, and I said, "Well, hell, you're going to go broke pretty quick." That's not the business you're in. You're in the business of promises, making sure you can pay what you said you're going to pay, managing a balance sheet, protecting the consumers, and making sure that you follow this pretty arduous regulatory and legal regime you've entered. So I think that while you don't have to have a huge compliance team, you have to have an understanding that you're in a little bit different business. It is highly regulated. The whole adage of, hey, we're going to break it and fix it later, or break it and disrupt it, that doesn't really sit well with regulators. Because I always tell people, when you have disruption in insurance, it means people are hurt badly. So you have to realize the business you're in. You have to respect that it's got a long history. Can it be better? Should we transform it? Absolutely. But a lot of the things that are in place, are in place for good reason. And that doesn't mean we should just do what we did yesterday. Absolutely not. But I think you have to have that historical perspective. And then finally, I think you have to step back and say, why are you doing this? So many of the entrepreneurs I've seen over the years have a good idea, but they run into kind of what I call the good enough trap. What's happening in a lot of carriers is good enough, and they're not going to pay $100,000 a year for this awesome idea you have because what they're doing is good enough. So you have to figure out why you're doing it. What problem are you solving? And I think you're going to see more and more integrate into the carriers. You're going to see more carriers invest directly in a strategic manner. But I look for people that have credibility. They surround themselves with smart people. They have a good vision. They know where things are going to be moving. They can raise money, and they have a runway. I mean, the last thing a carrier wants to do, in my humble opinion, is kind of cut a deal and then realize, well, hey, this entrepreneur's on fumes and they're out of business in 30 days.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you're not starting up a bar and a restaurant. I mean, you're going to be integrated into a carrier that has several 100,000 policyholders probably. If they become used to this service, the carrier's got brand risk, reputational risk, and that's why it takes long, because you have to go through, if they're publicly traded, you got to go through SOX compliance. If you're going to integrate, you got to go through all of these compliance regimes. And while some people may say they're stupid, they're the law, and you have to abide by it. And to your point, if you're cutting corners, ignoring that, you will get the attention of a regulator, and they will look at this. They'll come audit you and fine you or put you out of business, and depending on what their authority is and depending on what you did. So there's a lot at stake for these entrepreneurs. And I always tell some of the people I've mentored over the years, they're like, look, if you've been successful enough to raise $5 million, what are you going to say to your investors when they realize what you're doing is not going to comport with law in California or whatever state? Mm-hmm. What are you going to do when, I always say, I pick on Dave Jones. Dave Jones, Commissioner of California, is a friend of mine. He's a very smart guy. What are you going to do when Dave Jones comes in and does X, Y, or Z? Because you're not doing it right. And I think if you start from that perspective of, hey, we've got the customer in mind, we're going to focus on him or her, we're going to take care of that family, we're going to comply with the laws, we're going to leverage our insurance carrier partners and their compliance teams, because if there's one thing an insurance company is good at, it's process and compliance. So we're going to leverage that. I think it's a lot more successful doing it that way than trying to go the whole, hey, Uber, ask for forgiveness later, or whatever kind of, analogy you want to throw out there.
Spot On is sponsored by Insurance Licensing Services of America. Need help with corporate name changes, annual returns, or surplus lines tax filings? Feeling overwhelmed? If you're looking for experts in regulatory compliance, you've come to the right place. Ilse provides the industry with over 50 services. To learn more about the company and how they can help, visit ilseinc.com.
So actually, being that you're there in Iowa and you have all of these relationships with these startups and you've seen these sandboxes there, do they have like crash courses for these techies? Like, hey, here is the 101 on regulatory compliance.
No, a lot of them, I would say, have used me as their 101. I spend some time, not as much now as I would like to, because I have a full-time job and 4 kids. But, I do talk to quite a few still, and just kind of walk them through the ropes. And, there's no easy answer to that, to be honest with you.
Right.
It's going to be, hey, you got to read and learn and talk to other people. Talk to those that have gone before you. If you look at this other ecosystem that's developed, talk to a Surefire Dustin Yoder who's been through the ringer. Talk to Timothea at Slice who's been through the ringer. You talk to these people that have been there, done that. Mm-hmm. They're nice people. They'll probably talk to you, return your email, et cetera. And because you try to go it alone, it is pretty tough. And, talk to the regulators in the state. I was talking to an entrepreneur recently, and he's got an idea, a product he wants to launch. And I said, well, go talk to Dave Jones. Go talk to, I don't know, they're people, and they'll tell you what you're doing makes sense or not, and just have the conversation. If you got nothing to hide, might as well put it on the table now and see if your idea's got merit and can actually be licensed and go.
That's right. Will it fly? So we've talked a lot about the InsurTechs. I want to get your opinion on the other side, the incumbent insurance companies. What are you seeing are the top challenges that they are facing today?
Probably, depending on what side of the business you're in, the property casualty business, and we're kind of unique, by the way, because we do everything. Property casualty business, a little bit soft market. On the life spread business, you have prolonged low interest rates. So I think the things that are keeping people up at night still are sort of those macro issues, if you will. And then if you step back, the other things that are starting to, push the envelope a little bit on the challenges are customer expectations and the transformative changes that are happening there, and how do you meet the needs of these customers. And as I've kind of come to my own revelations in the last few years on this, it's an evolutionary process. It's not going to be revolutionary. It's going to be doing business the way the customer wants to do business, not necessarily the way we want to do business. And it's not necessarily being like direct to consumer omnichannel. It's more in the omnipresent. So if you want to have self-service on your account, great. Let's figure out a way to do that. If you want to use an agent, great. Let's figure out how to do it for that. And I think as people mature in their lifestyles and they have more assets to protect and things they care about, the need to have some professional advice is going to be greater than it is when you buy just a renter's policy. So the challenge, I think, for industry, as I sit here, is, how do we maintain relevance to all these different generations while we try to recruit the next generation, not only as employees, as we talked about earlier, but as customers? And how do you take what you do and make it more agile? And how do you look at, it's deafening if you think about where we are today with all the startups, all the noise. I mean, you could probably drive yourself damn near insane. So you have to process this and put it into some sort of strategic portfolio management so you can actually say, well, what are we trying to do? Because we're not going to just go look at a new toy because it's a toy. There has to be a business. I mean, you can't use technology just for technology's sake. There has to be a strategic reason. There has to be a business reason. And then you find a solution that makes sense to address that. So I think a lot of carriers are kind of sitting confused, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of opportunities out there. And for those companies that can hear the voice of the customer, those companies that are going to meet the needs of the customer on their terms, I think the industry is going to be very successful for many, many years. And I think the challenge then is really how quickly do you do it? How much capital are you going to spend? And then while you're managing, through some really tough, still macro issues such as the soft market, the reinsurance market ebbs and flows, and then you've got the low interest rates on the life and annuity side.
So does the anchor of the legacy system, what kind of effect do you think that has on their moving forward? Do they just buy startups?
No, I don't think so. I think where that lands eventually is sort of a hybrid model where your legacy systems, again, the legacy system goes back to the good enough problem I talked about, where it's good enough for today, but it probably won't meet the needs of tomorrow. So while there's some silver lining there, you don't have to do it immediately. There is probably a growing sense of urgency to figure out, what is the next then, and how are you going to create that next platform? So a lot of companies are doing systems upgrades, like we're going on the life side with a new system there. And some people are going to go that route. Some are going to probably shut them down and figure out cloud-based systems. Mm-hmm. Some are going to keep them going as long as they can and figure out ways to lay kind of strategic, kind of thinner stack technology solutions on top to address a certain need, whether that's a direct billing or a direct payment of claims or something like that. So I think there's not really a wrong strategy other than you have to come up with what makes sense. And a lot of these carriers we hear the legacy system issue a lot, but a lot of these carriers are sitting on 300, 400, 500 systems, depending on how you grew over time. Huh. And if you think about all the things you have to carry about, and then you throw in the cyber issues on top of it. Yes. There's a lot that you have to understand. And it's not as simple as, well, hey, we're just going to go migrate to the cloud and be done. It's not that simple. So every company's got to come up with how they want to do business. And some companies are going to probably run the legacy thing longer than others. And it'll work for them for a while. But the question you have to then say is, are you going to be able to put enough solutions on top that the consumers won't care because it's going to meet what I keep calling the good enough standard? Yeah, but you know what? The cyber is a beast in itself. It is. Cyber is, when I was commissioner, we started the work on the model law for cyber, and we had the Anthem breach, you had the Sony breach, you had all these breaches, and it is a monster. And here's the issue is any company can probably spend every dollar they're going to make, okay, and put it into cyber, and you could still have a breach tomorrow. So, you have to, again, do a CBA, look at how you're going to do that, what makes sense for your risk profile, comply with the laws, obviously. But at the end of the day, you have to be within a bounds of reasonableness, because you can spend everything you have and still not be secure 100%. It's almost impossible.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And at the end of the day, so many CIOs, CEOs, COOs don't sleep over cyber. So I want to talk about something else. You've gone from overseeing responsibilities that have been mainly regionally concentrated. How different are the regulatory challenges now that you oversee operations that are national and projects all over the place?
I always tell people I don't worry too much about the regulatory issues that we deal with here because I think I understand what commissioners are thinking, what they're doing, what they're working on, and how they're resource constrained as well. I think you have to step back and say, what is the project you're working on? What is the implementation issue? It could be a health plan you're working on. It could be a training program for agents. It could be a training program for internal people. You could be working on something with data governance. I mean, you have to be so adaptable. You have to have the kind of a living, breathing understanding of the regulatory environment. You have to have pretty good instincts to understand, okay, where is this line and what are you going to look at? I mean, to me, I don't even want to look down on a line. I want to be close to it, but not on it. And and then we want to really think about how do you build up what you're building, understanding that you have complied to the best of your abilities with that law, and you're not really going to look behind you to say, okay, well, there's a regulator knock on the door. And if they do, you have a very good reason for why you did what you did. And if this really gets to be a real bizarre question, I mean, pick up the phone, talk to lawyers smarter than me, or I go talk to a commissioner that I know that's had some issues in that space. And again, I grant you I have a probably different network than most people, but still, it's like there's a lot of ways to learn. And I don't think, again, compliance and regulatory is another area where you could spend every dollar you have as a startup or a lot of money as an incumbent. And if a regulator wants to come at you for some bizarre thing, they're going to have desk drawer rules. They're going to have opportunities to do that as well. So you just have to do what's best for your clients, your members, your risk profile, your business, be able to have a rebuttable case if something comes up. And if you find something, another thing too is like if things happen. I've worked in many companies where an issue comes up, whether it's something happened on a system issue and we realize we didn't do something the way we were supposed to do it, and it's not good going with your hat in hand, but I've gone to states and self-reported issues and said, here's what we did, but here's how we made everybody whole. Here's how we fixed everything. And then you talk about what does the settlement look like. And so, it's always better to, when you find something that's gone wrong or not the way you intended, just go ahead and, fess up and move on, because I'd rather do that than realize that they might find it and come after me later, because it's always going to be a better discussion if you tell them what happened versus them finding it.
And I would say if all else fails, then you just pull your ex-insurance commissioner card out. Put that on the table.
Yeah, exactly. Depending on what state, it might actually hurt me, though. But no, yeah, exactly. I mean,
that's true.
Again, I'm a little unique in the sense that I've got a probably different network than most. But yes. I think what I said really transcends for a lot of people. Absolutely.
Right. But for you, I think the card that they would pull would be, you should know better.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Well, exactly. It's like, you know you can't do that.
yeah. You'll have no excuse. Well, as a member of our circle of insurance professionals, what advice can you share with someone that's just entering the industry?
First, what I would say for folks that have decided to enter a career here, it's always good to do a little self-reflection on why. Is this a career or a job? I mean, that's a difference for a lot of people, and it could be a job that transcends into a career, or it could be maybe you're an actuary and it is your career. And so I always tell people it's always good to take some time to reflect. Self-awareness is probably a gift most people should spend more time trying to find, but try to figure out why it is you're taking that job and what you're doing. And then the next thing you can do is really learn as much as you can. I mean, when I got into the industry, I just devoured everything I could about financial products, learned a lot about retirement planning, annuities, securities, life insurance, try to become that expert. And then, what happens is as people see that what you're talking about, and you can leverage the 75% of the skills that get you where you really want to go, which is your soft skills, the doors are pretty wide open. So self-awareness is key. Lifelong learning is key. Knowing your why you're doing it is key. Because if you don't like it, get the hell out. Because life's too short, and go run a nonprofit or go start your own business, or don't just come to work and walk like you're going into the death chamber. I mean, go find a different job because it is a great industry. Or maybe you have the wrong job in a company too. Maybe, talk to your folks. And when you look at getting into the industry, look for a carrier that has some development programs, some leadership programs. Talk to them about where people like you would be in 3 years and 5 years. Do you have access to mentors? And if you don't, go find one. Spend some time. Again, I look at the tools that are out there for young people to just learn, even if you're just going to shadow people on LinkedIn, Twitter, and, kind of stalk them. If you read what they write, read what they post about, etc., you can learn a lot. And then you look much more worldly and well-informed, and you're able to carry out a conversation. And for a lot of people in their career, it really only takes one thing to break for their whole career to go a different direction than they thought. But if you're not ready for that, when that break hits, you got no chance. So, and you won't even know when the break hits. You just have to be ready for it. And you'll look back and reflect, oh, that was my break. I mean, like I look at my deal with the governor. That was my break. And so I think you have to step back and have that self-awareness, but you have to really be able to be prepared for when those opportunities arise. And when that iron is hot, you got to strike. And so I would tell young people, the industry is ripe for transformation. There's hundreds of thousands of jobs literally across the industry over the next 10, 15 years are going to be available. There's boatloads of capital going into different projects. The industry is not going away. It's going to be here for quite some time. People, as long as people do dumb stuff, there's going to be a need for insurance. So,
it's forever.
As long as people keep dying, you're going to need life insurance. As long as people keep saving money, you'll need annuities. So just find the right carrier with the right mix, with the right leadership, the right purpose. For us, our purpose is protecting livelihoods and futures. And we really shine in rural parts of the country where kind of people forget about other people. And that's why I love this mission we have and this purpose we have, because we're really protecting people that need it. And our brand matters in those communities, and people want to do business with us. I mean, that's what you look for, is you look for that environment that aligns with your moral compass and your values and your attitude, and you go.
I think the insurance industry is waving the flag right there, that flag of opportunity. And all you have to do is go and seize that flag. It's kind of what you're saying.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, and we admittedly probably haven't done as good a job as we need to continue that and to make sure that the next generation realizes that. So I think Des Moines might be more unique and Hartford might be more unique. I can pick a lot of other towns that have a large carrier or two in it, and probably a little harder for them. But again, those are good jobs that you can support a family with and buy a house with and have a pretty good life. And, you're going to work hard, but you're not killing yourself. So there's a lot of awesome opportunities in these companies that, I think young people should look to say, okay, I can go learn there. And again, it's really for the younger professionals. It's really about having that ability to be coachable and adaptable, learn, and look for opportunities within that organization, because you might start out in a call center or whatever center or whatever. You shouldn't be there in 3 years or 5 years. I mean, so it's looking ahead for what's your next opportunity.
Absolutely. And seizing that moment when it presents itself, like you mentioned. So, Nick, I want to share with our listeners, how do people connect with you?
Probably on Twitter, at Nick Gerhart. Also on LinkedIn. I get on there at least once a day, if not more, and sometimes post things. So, those are probably the best platforms to connect with me.
Fantastic. So again, on Twitter, and Nick is very active on LinkedIn. I've seen lots of his posts there, and I think that's how we might have originally connected. Thank you so much, Nick, for spending the time with Ted and myself on this episode of Spot On Insurance. Again, thank you.
It's been great to be on. Thank you.
Visit spotoninsurance.com, where you'll discover an ever-growing library of podcasts, videos, articles, and online tools by professionals for professionals to enhance your insurance education. By the way, that's where you'll also find our podcast notes and bonus resources. Please don't forget to click the iTunes link to rate and review, and let others know what you think of Spot On Insurance. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you next week.